So let's now work on that auth page and make sure that when we log in, so here in the auth form component, that if we called sign in and we did sign in successfully, that we then redirect, and that if we load this page, even though we are logged in already, we also maybe navigate away. Now let's start with redirecting after logging in successfully. We can simply do this here in this if check. Here we check if we don't have an error, so if signing in succeeded. And that is when we want to redirect. Now we could again redirect with window location ref, but that basically resets the entire application. That is fine for an initial page load, but if we already worked in this application and we have this single page application already going on, then we probably don't want to reset the entire application and lose all our state. Even though in this app we wouldn't lose much, but of course that's not necessarily the case for every app. So therefore, instead here for redirecting, the better way of doing that is by using the next router. So we can import from next/router, and from there we can import the use router hook. And then in our component function, we simply call use router here to get access to that router. We already worked with the router earlier in the course already. Now we work with it again. And once we got access to it, here we can simply call replace. And replace will basically redirect us. It will replace the current URL with a different one. And we can, for example, go to /profile here. And if we do that, if we implement this, now if I go back and I do log in with valid credentials here, after logging in, I'm redirected to that profile page. Of course, on the login page, we could show some loading state whilst this login request is on its way, but that is some UI feedback which you of course can add. The core functionality works. Now I just want to make sure that I can't visit this auth page if I am logged in already. And we could again implement this with get server-side props to check the authentication status when a request reaches that route. Alternatively, we implement our client-side workaround. And I'll do that here just to practice this again. For this on the auth page or in the auth form, doesn't really matter. Let's maybe do it here in the auth page. For this here, I want to use effect, so import that from React so that we can call get session in there. And for that, we need to import get session from next-auth/client. And then here in use effect, we have this effect function and our dependency array without any dependencies here, since we have no special dependencies. And we call get session. And then here we find out whether we have a session or not. And then here I want to check if we do have a session, because here the problem is if we are authenticated already. And if we do have a session, then I want to redirect away. For this here, we can either redirect with window location ref or with the router. So we can import use router from next router like this, get access to the router, use router like that. And then in here, simply call router replace and go to the starting page, for example. And now add router as a dependency since it technically is one, though it of course shouldn't change. So now we redirect if we are authenticated. Of course, I don't want to show the auth form whilst I'm still figuring out whether we are authenticated or not. And therefore, again, we can use state here, importing it from React, to have our isLoading state whilst we are figuring out whether we have a session or not. And this starts with a value of true. But here, if we don't have a session, and therefore we need to log in, and therefore we want to show the auth form, if that's the case, I'll set isLoading to false here. And then again, we can show some fallback whilst we are loading. and return a paragraph where we say loading like this. This will not be styled in any way. You could, of course, add some styling. With that, if I enter /auth here in the URL, we see loading briefly and then I'm redirected. So that works. And with that, we now also protect our auth page and the profile page. And we make sure that depending on our authentication status, we can only reach and use different kinds of pages, and we can't visit all the pages all the time. And that, of course, is an important part of authentication.